the studio of your mom's basement comes a podcast by two idiots in a revolving door of legends and has-beens from the oldest university in Texas. This is Purple, Gold, and Getting Old.
We're back.
We got the man from Boston / Nebraska / Austin.
I'm not from Nebraska.
Austin and Boston.
Oh, you're not? Well, that's right. I guess your family's from Nebraska, though, right?
Yeah.
You claim it. You wear enough giant red ends, you know.
True.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I found that the home opener tickets to Nebraska's game this year are like $20. I was like, let me look at how much travel would cost just to do like a one-man weekend awful drive. And I got it all figured out. I was so happy. Like, it was doable. I was gonna like go to the rail yard, eat a runza, go see my old house, and that was like it. And then I realized that when I calculated all this in my Excel spreadsheet, I had put the gas total and lodging total in a separate column. So here I was thinking I had the cheapest road trip in the world. I was like, oh, no, it's not cheap.
Well, but see, here's the thing. Nebraska holds that NCAA record for most consistent sellouts.
Yeah.
Or most consecutive sellouts. But that's the thing. They're like, man, $20 for the home opener. Like, nah. And so, like, they and like I've heard that people just kind of like step in every once in a while, like, oh, there are 300 tickets that are gone. Good thing I'm very wealthy and can buy 300 tickets right now. It's just like a thing that everyone's like, if you messed up.
Last 2 years, Scott Frost. I mean, when they found out that like I forgot how many tickets got bought up by rich people, but it was like, oh, okay, we need to let this man go.
He's also, I just drove through the whole state of Nebraska on the way to South Dakota. Not sure there's a lot else going on, but that's all I'm going to say.
I mean, from like North Oklahoma up onto Canada, it's just kind of the same stuff.
Yeah, people used to.
There's a little more hills than I realized.
Yeah.
People used to rip on Amarillo and our scenery. I'm like, it could be worse. we could be northeast a couple of hours. All right. Yeah. Well, folks, we're back. It's been a while. So if we hiccup on this thing, forgive us. We had the last episode with Seth Prohaska, which I'm still shocked happened. But since then, Tyler, he's had a kid. He's gone several states away. I'm still getting used to having a kid. So now we're bringing...
Yeah. Didn't get divorced during finals week.
Didn't get divorced during finals week. If you know, you know. But we're going to find out what Zach Martin's been up to. On a previous episode, I mentioned Zach because I had what we like to call the Latter-day Tucks. So we're actually going to dive into that era. But yeah, Zach, we'll just kick off to you. What took you from Boston to Austin, then Belton?
Oh, yeah. We can go there. Way back.
Actually,
your life story.
It goes further. I was born in Houston.
Oh.
I actually did not know that.
You knew that, and you never told us that the whole time because you were trying to push the whole, I'm not from Texas.
I mean, I definitely knew that.
Well, yes.
No, I mean, yeah, I was born in Texas. I moved to Massachusetts when I was 5. So the whole, like, there wasn't much of an ingrained Texas identity in me. I had a very... kind of like a firework, like bright and fast. I had a brief modeling career with Macy's as like a 4-year-old. No, when I was like 2, and I wore like Southern cowboy gear, and that is the only time that's ever happened.
So am I the only one here who has never been a model or worn cowboy gear as a gimmick?
I've worn cowboy gear as a gimmick because Simon exists. But yes, I also was a child model. So
were you really?
Yeah. When I wanted to like be like get in like films and stuff, acting, and so my mom was like, "Well, I don't know about that, but like there's this modeling agency, you can try that out and see what happens." And so I was in Foley's catalogs for several years, and but I never got like a commercial or anything on film like I wanted. And then when I became a teenager, they were like, "Yeah, so you gotta like bulk up and stuff," and I'm like, I'm good. So
y'all didn't know that because he went under the name Mike Honcho.
Yeah, my parents took me to like a modeling aid there because it was like a contest with Macy's. They're like, oh, be in this like fashion show / catalog thing, and so I was in that. But then they took me to a modeling agency and like, our kid's great, and he's like, yeah, he's a cute kid, and he's like, but I just want you to watch him for a minute, and I was just like picking up stuff and just like moving, just like going. And I was 2, and so he's like, "Yeah, I don't think he has what it takes."
Get this talentless kid out of here.
Exactly, and then I lost hair, so it's not like if I had a career, it was going to keep going anyway.
It's okay. I peaked even earlier. I was voted cutest baby of South Sioux City, Nebraska, and put on the Little Caesars marquee, and then it was all downhill from there.
I mean, I heard the Gerber babies from South Sioux City, so I feel like you're in good company.
I guess. I mean, I heard the Gerber baby's dead, so maybe I didn't have much competition.
I already knew this was going to be a really chaotic random pod, but like we were just off.
Yeah. So after you did your little turn on the runway, what was next?
Moved to Massachusetts, lived there till I was 16, then moved to Texas. Or Austin, I guess.
Yeah, difference between Austin and Texas.
It's different, man. I learned that when I got to Belton. I was like, oh, okay.
So
things are different.
I guess you were in Austin in like the 2000s.
07 was when I moved.
What
here.
do you miss most about that era of Austin?
I mean, so here's the thing, man. Austin is a city where people back to like 1970 are like, I was here when Austin was really on. And like, it's been growing ever since. And so, I mean, the other thing was I moved to Cedar Park, which is like, I mean, if we're being crew centric, it's the Temple of Belton, where it's like, it's like a place that's north of the other place. And so like, I didn't even go downtown Austin until I was like a senior in high school. Wow. I just didn't really. So, I mean, for me, really, I guess there are lots of concert venues that I miss. I mean, that's pretty much it.
Have you ever been to the Hot Spot, but it's spelled funny, like HOUTE spot?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to see Ace Frehley there next month, so I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I've never been. I heard that.
What brought you to UMHB then?
Dude, I don't know. Like, here's the deal.
Well, okay.
So I'm an elementary school teacher. So I was like, oh, I want to be an elementary school teacher. I knew that. And so then I talked to my guidance counselor. And she's like, all right, where do you want to go to college? I was like, I don't care. And she was like, okay, there are a few places that I think you should look at. UMHB, Concordia, and Pensacola Christian.
Ooh, you dodged the bullet on that one.
And so I had heard, I was like, okay, Pensacola. And she's like, they'll actually fly you out. I was like, whoa, a trip to Florida in high school, like to see a school. That seems. And so she's like, there are some things you should know beforehand. And then she told me all about Pensacola Christian. I was like, got it. So I'm going to apply to UMHB and to Concordia. I got into both places, not that hard. And this was right before UMHB's that like, I remember what it was. There was something about their acceptance rate.
Yeah, I do.
You remember this, Tyler?
Yeah.
Where it was like they were counting all applications started. And so like I got into both of those. UMHB was further away. That's how I got there. My first day on campus at UMHB was registering for classes.
Did the Earlies have anything to do with it getting you there? No? Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
Shout out.
No. There were a few people. Yeah. There were a few people that I knew going in there. They were one of them. But yeah, I mean, it was really just, it was close by. I didn't understand in-state and out-of-state and private tuition. I didn't understand that difference. Really wish I had, just in general. Not that I wouldn't have gone, like, not that I wouldn't have wanted to go to UMHB, but just like, I was like, wait, in-state tuition is how much cheaper? It's a lot, man. It's a lot.
It is.
Like a lot.
Well, okay. Yeah. So I was trying to think of this before we even came on the pod. I know you met a lot of the other Tucks through me, but I don't know how we actually met.
We both did. I don't know if yours was technically work study, but we both worked at the same unnamed after school care center.
How did I remember this? I remembered this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was purely that, man. Like that was just we were both. Were you doing work study at the time?
Yeah.
So like there was so much of this where like I would show up and I'd be like, I am technically not being paid for this, and like
that was the general attitude of everybody there, and like we had the best attitude, and we didn't have good attitudes.
Dude, it wasn't any better a few years before y'all worked there when I worked there as a freshman. And that was and again at this unnamed place, it was fun. I worked with Josh Davis, Franklin Smith. I mean, we had a little crew in there. It was fun, but it wasn't that fun.
I knew
Franklin was working there when you were working there.
Yeah.
Okay, he was still working there when we were working there. That's awesome.
But the thing is, the kids actually liked him. They hated the rest of us.
Yeah. I know one person who took naps in the like tunnel slide during playground time.
Oh yeah.
And like another who like actively showed up to work drunk. It just wasn't great. It wasn't a great place to be, and an even worse place to send your kid.
Well, I don't know if I've ever told y'all about the almost legal issue we had when I was there. I came down with severe allergies and I went to work and my eyes were bloodshot, and a cop came to pick up his daughter. It's like, I noticed your eyes are red. What's the story there? I was like, allergies, man. And then it hit me. I was like, I'm being interrogated. And so the next week they had a random officer show up for drug testing, and we all drug tested, and I was fine, but the receptionist got hauled off in cuffs in front of the kids. So
that sounds about right.
Sorry, receptionist.
Wow.
Yeah. With one of the
not all that I want to share on this podcast or that are all that funny. You know, some of them are just actually terrible, but
yeah,
not the best place.
Nope. It was a learning experience.
Yeah.
I worked there for a year and then not again.
Yeah, didn't like a table fall on a child that was in your class or something?
Yeah.
I don't think it wasn't your fault. It just
the tables were set up like for, I don't know. Sometimes there were tables in the gym area and they had moved them into a corner to like store them. And we were playing basketball and a kid went to go get a basketball that was under there. And we were telling him, don't do that. And yeah, he was okay. He was fine.
Good.
Yeah. One time I set up an obstacle course in my classroom. We had little trampolines and stuff, and I had them like jump off a table onto a trampoline, like onto another table. And like the lady who was like the head of it, like came by and saw what I was doing, was like, "Hi, Tyler," and just like kept walking. It was a place to be. Nobody got hurt, by the way. It was kind of fun. They had fun. They loved it.
Sounds a lot like a story that was told on the last podcast. So
that's how we met.
You end up at UMHB just randomly. Yeah. The Friar Tuck group during that time was in what I like to call, if these were Marvel movies, Friar Tuck Civil War. I mean, like everybody's at each other's throats right about the time you came around. And so I'm wondering like how it was that you came around and were like, yeah, this looks like a group I want to hang out with.
Man, so here's my first semester of college. I had a 1.8 GPA.
Nice.
I had perfect attendance. I was going to class. In my dad's words, he's like, son, you have to like try to get a GPA that low and still be present for everything. I was massively depressed. Like I showed up to college and I was like, cool, all these friends are going to come to my room and like beat down my door. And then when it didn't happen, I was like, wait, what's going on? And so like, really, I know this is mostly like humorous. Sorry. But like that was really a big part of it. It was like getting to know Tyler at the unnamed after school program was like the most consistent that I was seeing anybody. And so like really, I mean, this sounds bad because it ended up being good, but like I took what I got, you know what I mean? Like it was just like that was
it my magnetic personality?
I mean, it was absolutely that, but it was also the shared suffering of working at an unnamed childcare center. And just like, I mean, it was just that level of like I had gone to small schools for most of my life where it was like circumstantial friendships. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's similar, like living in a small town where it's just like, this is who you get, this is who you're here with. And so, like, when I went to a college, which again, UMHB is small, but it's still bigger than any school that I've been to, I was like, where is everybody? What's happening? And mainly because I didn't actually like put myself out there. I didn't come into UMHB with a good attitude of like, ooh, I'm going to meet friends. It was like a means to an end to me. I was like, oh, I'm going to be able to become a teacher by going to the school. So that's what I'm going to do. So, yeah.
I just, for my end of it, I just remember you being legitimately one of the funniest people I'd ever met.
Yep.
And I was like, I found this gem of like a human being. and I felt like we meshed well, and it was great. And I didn't realize that I was just used goods,
No, it's not even really that, man. What I'm trying to say was, like, there was a lot of there were a lot of things at the time. Like, there was one time where there was a party of some sort, and I was like, I'm not going to this. And then the party got busted, and I got phone calls from everybody in that group. But like, there was some like different
ours.
like
it was not ours that time.
Was not no. But it was one of those, like, there was still like some like lifestyle stuff. Like, you were still a little bit more eccentric than I was.
Okay.
And so, like, your personality was really big and my personality was really depressed. And so, like, there were times where I was like, yeah, I need to like stay back. I need to like just, because I don't know how to explain this. This is not this isn't going well. We're tanking this.
This is kind of interesting. Not turn this into like a mental health podcast.
Go for it.
I was incredibly depressed at the same time as well. I was depressed most of college, but like especially because I think I was a junior when you were a freshman, especially that year. And so, man, maybe we just sensed each other's depression that we hid with all sorts of sarcasm.
I'll jump into that as well, because same. I had just left UMHB. I was not even living in Belton, and living the college experience I had to go live by myself in an apartment and work in a cubicle all day and not have people to hang out with afterwards was like driving 90 miles an hour and then just stopping. And I wasn't ready for it. Didn't know what depression was at the time, so I wouldn't have told you that I had it. But in hindsight, I did. And what got me was Hannah was still there, so I'd come back to see her, and there just reached a point where everyone in the Tuck group, there were factions breaking off. People were mad at each other. I didn't think half of us were going to be friends anymore, which is funny because now a lot of us are as good of friends or better than ever. And there was one particular night where we were supposed to have a Mardi Gras party at Hannah's place, and I had a really bad fight with a former member of our crew, and it resulted in basically just 5 of us showing up to Hannah's place. Had no food, no decoration. It was not a Mardi Gras party. We just sat there. Tyler texted me and goes, hey, this Zach guy who's hilarious that I've been telling you about, I'm bringing him over. I'm like, might as well. There's like 4 people left in our group. Zach walks in, and from that moment, what?
Was this at Turtle Creek?
No, this was what we called the Crab Shack across from the hospital over like by Scott and White.
Oh, and, okay. Got it.
Yeah, so y'all walk in, and from the moment Zach walked in, I don't know if you were like, this room needs to lighten up, or if you were just like, no filter. But I mean, it got hilarious. Like, the rest of that night was great. And I was like, wow, we just got a much added spark of life to this thing. And it, as luck would have it, everybody kind of got over their issues. The group stayed together, and you were a part of it.
So Zach was like the child that saved a loveless marriage, is what you're saying.
That's what I feel like. Yeah. Which, hey, it worked out for me in the end. You know what I mean? Because usually that doesn't work.
No, you're right.
Just for anybody who sees this, that doesn't typically work. Not a good route to go. Go to therapy before you have another kid.
Yeah. This pod's gonna all be about just all of it.
My goal is to spin everything into like a mental health PSA.
I like that.
That's the goal.
Is it mental health awareness month? We could make it a special.
Brought to you by BetterHelp.
Yeah.
BetterHelp.com. We need to start throwing sponsors on here that aren't really our sponsors and just start putting the marquee at the bottom.
We'd get a cease and desist letter. Like, we can't be associated with this.
We gave you free publicity. Yeah, we lost sales.
Yeah.
So the tides kind of turned. You started hanging out with our group, which was kind of crazy. But before I jump more into that, I kind of want to know, like, you ended up getting involved, because I remember you would put these obnoxious Young Life statuses like every day on Facebook for a while. Like, what got you involved, and what was your favorite thing to be involved with?
I mean, yeah. So I got involved in Young Life in high school. I went to a Christian high school, so we didn't have Young Life because, it's kind of like you're not going to go to a water treatment facility to build a well. You know what I mean? They're kind of like mission accomplished and move somewhere else. And so I had a friend who was like, "Hey man, come to Young Life campus in the middle of Colorado. It's great." I was like, "I don't want to do that. I can't get off work." I know. And he's like, "If I can get you time off work and I can get your camp paid for, will you go?" I was like, "Sure, man, no problem." And it was the next day. Wow. And he had called somebody, had them donate money, and he had my dad call my boss. I was in high school at the time, so this wasn't super weird. It was still weird, but not as weird. And like got me time off. And then he's like, "Cool, man, you're going to camp." So I went for a week in Colorado. And so when we got to UMHB, I grew up in like an SBC church, but not a Baptist church, if that makes sense. And so like all of the ministries that I saw, I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't, like, some people were like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what this is." I just didn't know. And then we had Young Life, and Young Life was like this thing where like you could kind of just embarrass yourself, which I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. That is most of what my job is just embarrassing myself. And so I was like, cool, this is a great way to like build relationships with kids, get to know them better, be able to kind of take what I believe and kind of be able to share that with others. And so kind of just joined from there. I mean, we would go, mine was at Temple High School. So I would go to Temple High School and sit with kids at lunch and hang out with them. And it took a few months for that to actually happen and me not get yelled at by high school kids, because I get it. I don't want to talk to me either. So I'd show up and they'd be like, "Get out of here." And I'd be like, "Okay, bye, have a good day." But yeah, I mean, no, Young Life was great. It was, I think it's still on UMHB, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, it was a great way to, in certain ways, be the help that I wish I had had in high school. Just kind of like be able to come alongside kids, help them out. High school sucks. Everything's hyper urgent in high school. Everything is the worst it's ever been, the best it's ever been, everything. And so, being able to kind of come alongside people in the midst of that is, kind of a thing that I really enjoy, for sure.
So high school is the worst that it's ever been. This ad is brought to you by TikTok. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we got another sponsor. All right. What is something that you...
anxiety inducing to just walk into a high school lunchroom like that and try to just chat up kids?
I mean, yeah. I would sit down and they'd be like, "What do you want?"
Yeah. See,
"Oh, I'm just here. I'm here to eat lunch with you." And they're like, "We don't want you here." So I'd be like, "Okay, well, I'll be back tomorrow." And then like eventually like there were kids that like would actually be like, "Okay, fine, get over here." But yeah, most of the kids were like, "No, I don't want you here." And so
working in student ministry, that's not really much of a thing anymore.
Yeah.
But like I've definitely had to do my fair share of like just going into lunchrooms. And there's very few things I hate as much as that. I feel the judgment and anxiety.
Yeah.
And honestly, it probably even taps into like my old like own anxieties I had while in high school myself. Yeah. Like
it puts you back there.
Yeah, it does. And it's
if
like
I had to do that, oh my gosh, y'all, I would just have to go into thing and think of this as a prison ministry, not a children's ministry. Like that's the only way I could view it. Because I couldn't do that.
Well, high school kids are mean.
Yeah.
And I was mean in high school. I'm not trying to be like, "Oh, they're all like super mean these days." Like I was mean too. But
Where I grew up, it was mean but funny. Like, yeah, it was like it got excessive towards me. I suffered through stuff I shouldn't have. But then I look back and I'm like, dude, I was the bottom of the totem pole and I even had people to pick on, like it was so mean. But we didn't have Snapchat recording everything we said back then. So I kind of pity today's youth. But one thing
I got called gay so many times in high school. I feel like I should be able to celebrate Pride.
I was trying to think of a sponsor for that, and I just couldn't. It's all of them.
I was trying
to name one.
On that note, what's something you wish you had been involved?
Supports Pride.
What's something you wish you'd been a part of at UMHB that you didn't?
Man, there were so many things that I never did. So like my wife, her cousin went to UMHB, and so like growing up, my wife would go, she's a little bit younger than me. And so she would go to all of these UMHB events. She's been to more UMHB events than I have, in the sense of like, she's been to like Crusader Nights. She's been to Miss MHB. She's been to Easter pageant. I haven't been to any of those.
Wow.
She's been to stunt night. Never went to stunt night.
Never did Crusader Nights.
No.
You would have excelled at that.
Yeah, he'd have been a great participant.
I don't even know what it is.
Wow.
I'm like, it's so weird. And so like, I just don't, I wish I had done those things. Yeah. And I think that really what it was that first semester, again, like just not being in a great place. I think that I missed out on a lot of the like introductory stuff that is like, hey, here's what it means to go to this school. And so I think I just kind of missed out on that stuff. So I think like even that, I just wish that, I had done those things. Not for like the friends you made along the way, just like in the sense of just like people still talk about them. I have no idea what that is. Yeah, no clue.
Well, you end up, and this is, I know it's kind of like jumping back to where we were a second ago, but something I'm curious about is most of the guys we've had on this Tuck series, we bring them in, and most of them were a part of the original crew, which had like Nathan and Kane and all of them in it, and Andy. And for you, I think I can count on one hand the amount of times I've seen you and Andy in the same room. Like it was a different crew. Like we had Patty was around around that time. Or you got there a little before Patty, but like Jake Mayfield started coming around a lot. Like we had a different group of guys, and then Nathan would travel in sometimes. But obviously we know how you know Tyler and me, but like was like those other guys that were around, what did you like about hanging out with them?
I mean, I think that I'm going to make comparisons that make people sound old, and that's not my goal. It's like going to family reunions sometimes, where like the level of like stories that people have and things like that, you're like, oh wow, okay, I know half of this. Like it's like hearing stories about like your dad or your uncle, where you're like, I know this person well enough to like be able to imagine them doing whatever they're talking about. And so I think that it was good in that sense. It's always good to again, I didn't really know anybody, any of those people that well. So a lot of times when they would come, I would just kind of hang out in the background, because a lot of that is like they're coming back for something, and that's not me. And so I think that, a lot of that was just, again, hearing about times that I wasn't there for. I think that's, it's always fun. I feel like there are lots of things that, it's good to hear about, like versions of people that don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like for better or worse, like I feel like now that we're all like in some form or another dads, there's a part of you that's like not there anymore. And like it's still there deep down, but like it's just not brought out as much. And so I feel like it's kind of a similar thing. Like, oh yeah, hearing about a time that isn't now. So I think like with you having graduated at that point, there was a part of you that existed only in stories, because if it existed in real life at that time, it would have been concerning. I don't know. Like there's just like, there's that person like, well, there's this person who's like, I've been going to this school for 15 years. And it's like, it's time, man. Like
we knew a few
kind of like that. Or like or your friend who is still talking about that one game, and you're like, awesome. That version of you should have died a while ago. Like, and that's okay. happens. Like our lives are just a million different versions of ourselves that we just kind of like slip in and out of, and that's okay. But yeah, so there's a lot of that.
Well, and
so there was also like a splinter group though, because there was me and you and Amanda.
Well, that's what I was about to say. It was like yeah, I like the that was a great analogy for like the previous guys, and it wasn't really what I meant with the question, but I love that answer. I was thinking more of like Patty, Jake, Amanda, like the Rebecca, all of us that were there later, like what your memories were kind of from that era. So like not the one you missed, but the one you were there for.
We hung out in Amanda's apartment a lot. It was called the Gathering Spot. What are some of do you have any good memories from like hanging out kind of there within that little like circle and the shenanigans we'd get up to?
I remember one time we dressed up in like I dressed up in like a monkey mask or something for somebody's birthday.
That was that Amanda Gigante's birthday, I think.
I don't know whose it was.
I think it was.
It was something.
You were like playing music. You were like a DJ thing.
Yeah.
And I had I had Tinkerbell pajamas.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a photo on Facebook still.
There still is.
Won't describe it anymore, but it's up there for you to peruse if you can find it.
I think really like a lot of that, because that was mostly that first year. That group was kind of there, and I think right?
Yeah.
It was mostly that. So really for me, it felt like I don't really remember like individual things, but I do remember that it felt like joining a group of people who just didn't necessarily give a second thought to the fact that I was new because I was associated with other people, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's like, cool, like you've passed through these people, great. And so it was just, I think that like the reason why things don't stick out is because so much of like that experience didn't feel isolating. Like it felt unremarkable in the sense of just like, it was just like, all right, cool, come on in. Which I think was great. Like that was something that I think I needed, because if every single interaction had to be like a big introduction and then like a whole question, I probably wouldn't have stuck around. But it was just like a seamless.
I think that was like, that makes sense though, because that group kind of just came together for that little time. It was like the little Tuck group that Garrett was talking about, it totally like had broken apart. And so there was like some of us, and then there were people that were like connected to like Amanda because they're roommates, and they had some like their own friend group that had like come apart a little bit on its own, and Amanda had gone through a breakup. And so like I think it was a lot of people that were kind of like searching, and we all just kind of found ourselves in the same time and place. Yeah. And we were just like, we'll make the best of it. And I think that's part of the fun of college, right? That you just get thrown into these really random social interactions and circles that you would no way otherwise at any other point of your life be thrown into.
Oh yeah. And like that whole Friar Tuck thing kind of made a resurgence there later on. And like when I moved back to Belton and Nathan would come to town and all that. So it was almost like we were a fraternity that didn't make you rush. I was like, nah, he's in. I had written down, oh yeah, I had a note here. Speaking of your Facebook, I think you managed to troll the entire university by convincing them your middle name was Bartholomew. What was that about?
I mentioned that I did not come into UMHB with the best attitude. I'm very bad at forced socializing. I am not typically a rebellious person, but the second that I'm forced to socialize, I turn into a child. And so for the entirety of Welcome Week, I lied about what my first name was. I don't have a reason for this. I have no idea why. I do know that it got tricky at times because people just assumed that was my name, and then I had to either lie and say it was my first name or tell them the truth, and that they have been thinking that my name was something totally different for like a year and a half. So, and it wasn't really that I was like that I kept the lie. It was just for Welcome Week, but of course that's when you meet most people. Mm-hmm. And so it was just kind of like there was just a lot of it was very broad. It was kind of like, like when COVID came back on that plane. And it's like, well, now everybody's got it. Like, you can't really do anything at this point because now all those people are going into their individual spots. And so it just kind of spread.
We have a COVID in it. This brought to you by Pfizer. See, great minds still think alike when they get going. I just love how, like, on Facebook, it was like Zach Bartholomew Martin. So when we were at your wedding, I pull out the little handout and I told Tyler and Hannah, I was like, dude, I was like, how many people at this wedding are learning something today? They find out his real name.
Well, and so the original reason that I put that on Facebook was I realized, because I'd had several people be like, yeah, I can't find you on Facebook. And then like, oh, right, because you're not searching for anything even remotely in my name. And so I was like, I got to change this so that it at least, so they go like, oh, he goes by his middle name, something, which I don't remember the last time I've been on Facebook, but back then it mattered.
You're not missing much.
And so, no, I can't imagine I am.
I've gotten to the point I'll check once a week. I just needed to get away from it. Brought to you by BetterHelp.com.
My mom's like, I sent you something on Facebook. I'm like, I don't even know my password anymore. Like, I don't know how to log into this.
Folks, we had to cut real quick because we have the cheap version of Zoom. Speaking of a nice quick cut, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped.
Speaking of cutting, I hope you cut that.
Nah. You're not a real podcast till they're one of your sponsors. Speaking of, you getting married and all that. So did your wife not go to UMHB? Because I could have sworn that's where y'all met.
Oh, no.
She's related to Rachel Jeske. Am I correct in remembering that?
That's correct. Yes, they're cousins.
Did know her, yeah.
Yeah. My wife went to school in LA.
LA.
Yeah, she went to Biola University.
Oh, I heard of it.
Yeah. Biola and Azusa Pacific are kind of the two in that area that are.
Yeah, I hear they're going to be in the Pac-12 next year, the way things are going.
Yeah, I met her. So we actually grew up like 7 minutes from each other. And by grew up, I mean when I moved in Austin, she was 7 minutes from me, but we never met until New Year's Eve 2014. So yeah, we met at a camp out with some mutual friends that we had. We never crossed paths before. And then we dated long distance a year and a half while she was in LA and I was in Austin teaching.
What year did you graduate?
Sorry, I think you said, where did I graduate? And I was like, why am I here?
The whole point of
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Golly, you beat me. Okay.
Sorry.
You came in 2 years later and finished 2 years earlier.
I mean, hey, it's a journey.
Yeah, it's some longer than others.
Like The Hobbit is an unexpected journey. I think, Tyler, you need to write a book about your entire college experience. We call it like an unexpectedly long journey. Just roll with it.
Yeah.
What was your favorite sports memory?
Back again, the story of church history repeating over and over.
Wow, it skipped, and I think it just like aired everything we all just said at once. What was your favorite sports memory at UMHB, other than heckling Tyler at intramural soccer with a vuvuzela?
Actually, I've got some. It's about soccer.
So there are a few. The 81-3 football game was wild. I don't remember who we played, but I remember like in the middle of the first quarter being like, oh man, this is going to be kind of boring. And it was.
I did a push-up for every point in that game. I don't know how I survived.
I'd say that's dumb. Wait, so like when they
push-up thing,
and now saying I did push-ups for every touchdown at that LU game. So like when we scored the first touchdown, I had 7 push-ups, then 14, then 21, kept going up to 81. Jeez. It was exhausting.
Let's get in shape this year by doing that. Crew football games. Yes. Every touchdown.
I need more than that.
Another one was the Division III NCAA tournament in Atlanta.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I went to that one.
Did you ride the bus?
No. Me and a few friends drove. We basically drove through the night, got there in time for the game. They lost. We got in the car and we.
Oh wow,
that sounds terrible.
Yeah, It was one of those it was one of those like miserable, but we're all miserable together kind of things.
I have a memory related to you and sports that kind of goes in that same category. Driving to Abilene and your music player, for whatever reason, was stuck. Like you could not undo the Space Jam whatever volume. I think I heard the Space Jam song more on that trip.
This was Jock Jams Volume 2.
Jock Jams Volume 2.
Yes, ESPN's Jock Jams.
I just remember from that trip, I had some dumb like prank I wanted to do on the school, and I can't even remember what it was. I'm like, Zach, this is the plan, and you're like, yeah, man. But then we get there, and you're like, dude, we're not doing this. I'm like, why not? Let's do it. We got.
I remember exactly what it was.
I do too. It was horrible.
You wanted to switch out the flag.
No, not that one. This was
not that one.
He thought it would be a great idea. Like, dude, we got the best idea to prank them. I'm like, all right, let's hear it. And he's like, we're gonna hang a bed sheet that says this is our house. I'm like, okay. And what else? He's like, no, that's it. And so you and Amanda, I remember y'all hung it and y'all showed me a picture. I'm like, dude, y'all put it on the visitor side, so it's just gonna show up to our fans. And you were so mad at me for not believing in it.
You know,
that is
sometimes it's hard to find the line of where's too far to push and where's not far enough to push. It's a fine line you got to find there.
I think we covered all those ends.
You're gonna like egg the logo or set the stadium on fire. Yeah, it's hard to figure it out. Yeah. Another one. I had a guy from who do we used to play in basketball from Mississippi?
Mississippi College.
Oh, okay. I don't remember what I said, but a player from Mississippi College tried to fight me after a game once.
Oh, that's incredible.
It was interesting. Yeah. There was a guy.
What did you say to him to make him want to fight you?
I think that I said, start spelling Mississippi, and by the time you're done, you'll be home. I think that's what I said. It was not.
Wanted to fight you.
I've mentioned high school and college kids are jerks. I was one of those. Also, there was another guy who was on a team who was like balding.
Was this Concordia?
Yeah. I don't know who it was. I'm not sure.
Their whole coaching.
Yeah, I think it was.
No, I remember who he's talking about.
I think it was Hardin Simmons. And so what I did was I still kind of had longish hair at that point, but my hair was thinning. So I was like, I need to just like cut all my hair off. So what I did was I just cut right here, like male pattern baldness, and waited until he was doing a free throw, and took off my hat and yelled his name, which joke's on me. But, It was one of those things that I remember at one point, like Randy O'Rear and Weathersby both looking back and laughing.
Yeah.
And it was like the one time in college that I was like, I did something right.
Nice.
But it was very mean.
We say these things are mean, but like, were they really that mean?
Well, so I'm a big fan of like, and this is also the elementary school teacher in me. I'm a big fan of like, don't point out or make fun of something that somebody can't change in 5 minutes, right? Because like he can't help that. Like I can't help the fact that I'm 5'6". Now, if somebody makes fun of me for it, I'm like, yeah, I'm aware how tall I am. It's not changing. Like I'm beyond getting hurt by that. Some students are like almost as tall as me, and I'm like, cool, whatever. I don't know. I just having a decade of hindsight, I'm now just going, that was probably unnecessary.
I think it's one of those things, like if you were to yell that as a 30-year-old, like you're kind of just a jerk, but like I don't know.
Just at a Division 3 college game. At a Division 3 college game, just shave my head, be like, I look like you. Holding my kid.
I've sat with some of my students at like high school games. And like we'd start mentioning like what their fan section was doing, and I would like tell some funny story of like something I would chant in college. And I've had some like the kids in my youth group were like, dude, you need to like come to our games and do that. I'm like, oh, that would not be good for a whole variety.
Only exception.
That old jerk over there. Oh, that's the local youth pastor.
I mean, but really, if you think about the age disparity there. So the age disparity, but also I kind of feel the same way when adults go to college games. We're like, what are you doing? It's like he's 18 years old.
Oh my gosh. Texas fans, the
he
worst. They're like, I went when they did a Hurricane Harvey charity basketball game. So it would not go on the official record, but the NCAA said, yes, A&M and Texas can play at Rice to benefit Houston. It's like, cool. A lot of A&M students. This one dude, fat, bald, probably 50, kept like heckling the A&M students. And he walked by at the end after they won. He's like, yeah, hook on. So we all just started chanting credit hours at him because it was like, dude, like, who are you? Why? Yeah. The only exception I'll make is I would go to one of Brett Myers' baseball games and just start yelling at parents and students and stuff. Just see how long it lasted.
I don't know if I'd want to go to Deep East Texas and start yelling at people. That's my only question.
What could possibly go wrong?
Get out. Yeah.
So after college, you are an educator now. Like, take us through your post college. So, yeah, that was kind of almost a good transition. Like, you're past college. Yeah. Okay, well, what have you been doing?
I'm a teacher, man.
So sorry.
I taught a technology class for kindergarten to 5th grade students for 6 years. And I've taught 3rd grade for 3 years. So yeah, same school district. Haven't changed anything except for career roles. So that's been it. Not much movement since then. So I love it.
What is the thing that fulfills you most about teaching? What's the thing that fulfills you the most about teaching, that gets you up in the morning?
Money. No.
Brought to you by Texas Department of Education.
Quicken Loans. So I think that when I started out, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna fix poverty, which was a very earnest desire of mine. I was like, I'm gonna do this. Then I realized that I can't do that, and that if somebody could have done that, they would have done it by now. And so
that
I really
sounds political.
Yeah. So I think that really what it is I want to make my classroom and the environment that I work in a place where kids can feel cared for, known, but also just taught how to be a human. Now there's a huge focus on test scores. Things get tricky where the reason for school has been murky, but really the reason why kids go to school, and we noticed this the most when COVID hit and we were all going virtual, is they go to school, yes, to learn, and those are great. The ability to read is incredible, but they also learn how to be a human, and they learn that by messing up. And school provides an environment where they can mess up and where they can try to they can navigate friendships and relationships in a low stakes environment, where I have conversations with kids every year where I'm kids who want to fight everybody. And I'm like, hey, what do you think happens if I'm walking down the street and somebody bumps shoulders with me and I turn around and I punch them in the face? You get in trouble. And I was I lose my job and I go to jail. There's just times where you can be hey, this is an environment where you're safe to fail, but we're also going to teach you real things about life here. And so I think it's really been that's been the best thing. I've loved teaching 3rd grade. I went from having 650 students to having about 40. And so it's been really great. It's just great to get to know and build relationships and be able to kind of do that stuff. And just kind of, especially post-COVID, where a lot of kids were basically with their families for a year and a half, 2 years. Just kind of being able to create an environment where they can really learn how to be a person. And I feel all of us, kids, adults, and everything, lost that at least some small aspect of what made us a person pre-COVID. And so a lot of people are still in the process of figuring that out. And so I think kids, even though they're super adaptable, and kids are just wildly adaptable, but you're still just kind of seeing kids struggle with that. And that makes sense because I struggle with that, and my parents struggle with that. And so, yeah.
Is there any like particular lesson or person or like class you took, or just even an experience outside of class at UMHB that still informs the way you do your job now?
Faith informed discernment in a global society.
Yeah. So I mean, really, it was just the mission statement. No, I mean, so like I really liked my linguistics class. My linguistics class was really great because it focused on there is no wrong. The goal is communication. And so like I grew up, and maybe you guys did too, in an area where like there is a specific way to say these things. And if you don't say it this way, you're wrong. And like the whole linguistics class was like, no, forget that. That's not how it is. Like if you understand what someone's saying, that's correct English. That's correct linguistics. And so I think that has allowed me to, I'm teaching in an entirely different culture than I grew up in. I am a very, very white person. And I'm teaching in a school that is about 85% Hispanic. And so I'm the outlier from a culture standpoint, from a gender standpoint, from like everything. And so like I'm able to kind of come in and due to classes like that, like our linguistics class, really conform to the environment that I'm in instead of demanding that everybody else who's part of a shared culture conform to my environment. So definitely that one. Child development was always great. Just because there are things that I'm like, it's really good to know what to expect at this age and things like that. So, I mean, really those were great. And I think that there were also plenty of, even in college, professors, both good and bad, that made me realize like I want to incorporate aspects of this into my class, or I don't want to incorporate aspects of this into my class. Yeah.
Very cool.
And other note I had written down that we were texting about the other day was foster parenting. Because like when I first saw you post about that, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like what kind of led you to that?
So we foster humans. I've had to clarify that in Austin a lot.
Oh gosh.
Because people are like, oh, like, yeah, people are like, oh, dogs. No, people. And so we were part of a church in Austin, and there was just a very large concentration of single women who were fostering. And so we just kind of like noticed that, and a good friend of ours was like, I want to start, I want to become a foster parent. She was a single woman, and so we were just kind of like, oh well, we are two people, so like we can help with that. Like we can come alongside you, we can like babysit, do whatever you need, and like just kind of do that. And so the more that we started to do that, the more we realized, okay, there are things in the Bible that we are not doing. And it's not, of course, every single it's hard to give like this spiel without indirectly making people feel guilty. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's hard to be like, oh yeah, well, you're supposed to give all you have. And it's like, well, some people, it's just there are aspects of the Bible like caring for the orphan that we were like, we have the resources to do this, we have the ability to do this, and we have the desire to do this. And so we are like, if we have friends who are doing this by themselves and we think that we could do this, any sort of like excuse that we have, any sort of like obstacle that we feel is in the way, it's like, what obstacles in the way that both of us working together couldn't help, and like our community around us. And so for us, it just seemed like one of the more tangible examples of the gospel that we had seen. And so we just spent about a year getting licensed. It doesn't take that long, but we had decided we want to start in this state. And so we had just kind of did all the stuff. But yeah, we've been in it almost a year.
Cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique. I looked at it, I was like, yeah, I don't think we've had anyone on the podcast that has that angle or anything. I was like, it's kind of a unique thing.
It's cool, man. It's been. I'm a big security and control person. Like I like to know what's going to happen next in my life, in my day. I'm a teacher, so like my schedule is planned down to the minute during my workday. So it's like there are just so many aspects of this where I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen and when. And fostering has been the exact opposite of that. So that's been a great way to like challenge me. Our first foster placement was 5 days old. We picked her up from the hospital.
Oh, wow.
She was with us for 7 weeks. And then our second foster placement was 2 months old, and he was only with us for 2 weeks. And then our current one is almost 2, and he's been with us for about 4 months. And so, you know, it's just there's so many positives. You guys have kids, you know, there are so many positives to having kids. And you're also, when fostering, kind of co-parenting with the state. And sometimes the state's a really good parent, and sometimes the state is not the best parent. And so, yeah, it's been an adventure. It's been a big challenge to my desire to know what's going to happen next, because every time I think I know what's going on, something changes. So.
I'm always amazed by what you do. You know, I always turn up the JPMs real quick. Jesus is per minute. I always talk about how everybody's in ministry. Even if you're not in ministry, you're in ministry. Yeah. And I feel like of everybody I know that's not in ministry but is really living out a life of ministry, you are like one of the most glowing examples that I can think of. And like, even is to the ministry friends that I talk about ministry things and think about like is in ministry. And like I sometimes forget that you are not actually like in full-time professional ministry, because like you were in that career because you live your life doing ministry, even if it's not in church settings, which, you know, I think ministry needs to happen outside of church. So no, I'm amazed and impressed, and all the, yeah, you do it, man. It's awesome. It's an encouragement for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's interesting because I think that it's made me realize that there are so many hard things that I don't do because I don't think that I can. And so, like, again, sorry, I don't know the tone of this. I don't know what
we shift wildly. Like, we will be making jokes about,
cool.
Yeah.
So well, so for example, my number one fear in life is the dentist. I can't stand the dentist. I don't like it. I'm scared of it. I have a really hard time. But I'm also an anxious person. So for the last year, I felt really anxious about my teeth. When I get anxious, my anxiety goes into my teeth. So I get like phantom pain. It's just weird. And so today, or last week, I was like, I'm learned about this because my anxiety is just always focused on that. I need to just make an appointment, because then I go to the dentist and they either go, you're right, or they go, you're wrong. And I went to the dentist and they're like, yeah, you're fine. And like, but I spent a year, and we're like, it took us a year to get certified, mainly because we were deciding on the timing. But like, there were so many things like, what if this goes poorly? Like, what if something happens? What if this? And like, the answer was like, yeah, if it does, it does. And like, there's so many times that like we talk to people about fostering, they go, oh, I could never do that. And it's hard for me to not be like, yeah, you could. Not everybody needs to. Not everybody should. Just like I shouldn't be lots of things. There are lots of things that I shouldn't be, because I'd be a bad version of those things. But I think that like so many times we scare ourselves from doing challenging things because they're challenging. And I think that, again, that's not like how everybody needs to foster. It's not true. But I think that like I have spent most of my life not doing things that scared me. And I think that fostering has been a really good example of like, and I'm sure you guys have also experienced this with like having kids. Kids are scary in the sense of like everything has an impact. Like when I got married, I was like, oh my God, every financial decision I make from now on now impacts 2 people. And then when you add a kid in the mix, you're like, oh my gosh, every decision that I make now impacts this kid later in life. Like I am beginning to form what my kid is going to go to therapy to pick apart later on. And like, there are so many scary things, but it's also like, am I just going to not do it? I'm also not trying to say that everybody needs to have kids. I feel like I need to like explain myself out of every corner that I'm in, but just like in that level, do things that scare you.
Yeah, I think
I'll back you up. A lot of people really should not have kids.
Of comfort and like, I feel like we're all like, it'd be great if we did that. Like, well, that's not realistic. And we hold ourselves back. from like just living the way we should as Christians and people in general.
Yep. Cool.
Anyway, this podcast was brought to you by Manscaped.
I like how you've just slowly like formed into just
fade into the darkness now.
Just teeth.
I was about to say Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I'm like, oh, they might actually come after us if I claim that was a sponsorship.
This is brought to you by the Church of Scientology.
Dude, well, one time Garrett like called the Jehovah's Witness.
I still feel bad about this, by the way.
Yeah, so this is a great prank, by the way. It's not a great prank, but you can request for them to come talk to you, or you can request for them to come talk to somebody else. And so I was at home for Christmas.
And my parents,
oh yeah. And so my parents were like, "Hey, Tyler, there's some people who want to talk to you at the door." I'm like, "Huh?" And I show up and it's Jehovah's Witnesses. You're like, "Yeah, you put in a request?" I'm like, "I don't recall that." And so we chatted for a while, and then I was like, "Listen, we're done." And they're like, "Well, let's talk later." I'm like, "Well, I'm going back to college." "Well, where do you go to college?" "Mary Hardin Baylor." "Okay." And then like a month later, they called me, said, "Hey, we'd like to talk." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's see if we can find a time." "Well, no, we're on campus now. Where do you live?"
Oh my gosh, I didn't know they went that far.
Trying to find me, yeah.
Dang,
it's like swatting, but like with a religious angle.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know if it's still there, but back in 13, 14, yeah, you could go to the LDS site and sign somebody up for a visit. Which after it was one of those, it was late at night. My cousin showed this to me. I was like, "Dude, I'm gonna get Tyler." And then like the next day, I'm like, "That was stupid." I feel kind of bad. Then I get a text from Tyler. It's like, "Did you send the Jehovah's Witnesses to my house?" And I was like, "No, I sent the Mormons to your house." Like, sorry.
Yeah, was it Mormons? I don't even know.
Yeah.
All I know is I was in Greek at the time, and so I'm like, I'm gonna show them my Greek skills. And so I'm like, "Oh, you think that? Well, let me show you what the Greek word means in the Greek that I really halfway know, and I'm just repeating something my professor told me to make me sound really smart and smart."
Nobody really knows Greek. Everyone just repeats what their professor said.
Yeah, this is why I like when people are like, "Man, the Friar Tuck people, when they were in the couch crew, they were so mean to other schools." I'm like, "Oh, you should see what we did to each other." You think that's bad?
Fair. Yeah, fair. Although, it can get worse. I was on a mission trip this last week, and one of the moms that came along was a volleyball player at some kids were chanting UGLY, "You ain't got no alibi," every time one of their players touched the ball. And I'm like, wow. See, we wouldn't even thought that's way too far for us. So I'm like, we weren't that
That's
bad.
A little too much.
Batman had his limits.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Speaking of kids and all that kind of stuff, I am gonna have to jump off here soon. But this has been fun because Zach, I don't think I've gotten to I've texted you, but I haven't gotten to talk to you somewhat face to face in a while. So, and I only live an hour from you. We need to make that happen.
Where do you live?
Temple.
No, you moved around a lot for a while, and so I just kind of
I run from the government.
I assumed you were in Houston.
I'm like the Carmen Sandiego of people we went to school with.
Love it.
Yeah, we tried one time, but then we found out Garrett wasn't allowed in the cheap section. But we all need to go to an Austin FC versus Houston game together.
To clarify, I was all for going until I was told I had to wear green. I'm not going to betray my team.
If you wanted the cheap tickets, that's the thing. Those are the cheapo tickets.
I was going to say, you can get the real pricey ones with nice bucket seats kind of thing.
Yeah. If you want to help pay for our Captain Morgan Club seats, I'll go with you. That'll be fun.
Well, to be fair, too, the Dynamo weren't even worth watching. I was like, y'all going to kill us in this game, which this season, it's either way. But
I was going to say.
We had a good game the other night, though.
Yeah. Congrats on splitting the series. All right.
I think there's one game to go.
Is there? Hold on. I'm looking at it now. No, I think they only gave us 2 this year. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
I'll have to look. I thought we had played 3, maybe not.
Because I thought the same thing. I was like, well, we can still win 2 out of 3. And I looked at my schedule. I was like, I don't think we can. So, oh well. virtual handshake on a tie. All right. That's all I got.
Even if this loser over here doesn't show up, we should go to a game at some point.
Absolutely. Not now.
I do want to go. I do want to go to that stadium because I've
Also,
driven up to it.
It would be hard to convincing my wife to let me leave her with a month old and a 5-year-old to go to a game and drink beer now.
That's valid.
Yeah. But at some point we need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, it is 9:13 p.m. and HSU still sucks.